2 hours. That's all it took. 23 years after the original drop, 50 Cent watched the G-Unit G6 sneaker vanish from Reebok's shelves in 120 minutes. And somewhere in Miami, Rick Ross had to sit with the worst possible sentence a rival can hear. The numbers don't support you. Sold out? Not in a week. Not overnight. 2 hours. And this wasn't supposed to happen. For months, Rick Ross stood on every camera that would hold still and told the culture that 50 Cent was finished, that the followers were fake, that the streams were bots, that nobody was buying those ugly shoes. Rick Ross laughed into the lens and said the G-Unit sneakers were headed for Costco. Rick Ross said stop capping to the people. Rick Ross said ain't nobody buying them. And then the sneakers sold out before lunch. But here's the part nobody is telling you. This story isn't really about a shoe. This story is about a meeting that happened over 20 years ago, a conference room, a long table, and a group of millionaires who all made the same fatal mistake at the exact same time. One forgotten detail explains everything happening right now. The beef, the bankruptcy jokes, the trolling, the sellout, all of it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Stay locked, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why 50 Cent doesn't argue with Rick Ross anymore. 50 Cent just files paperwork and cashes checks, while Rick Ross is still trying to win an argument that ended 2 decades ago. Let's rewind. The year is 2003. 50 Cent is not a rapper at this point. 50 Cent is a weather system. Get rich or die trying is swallowing the entire music industry. G-Unit is an army, and Reebok does something the sneaker world had basically never done for a hip-hop artist at that scale. Reebok hands 50 Cent a signature shoe, the G-Unit G6. And here's what separates this deal from every endorsement before it. 50 Cent didn't treat the shoe like a paycheck. 50 Cent treated the shoe like a mission. 50 Cent wore the G6 everywhere. Every interview, every show, every photo, every video shoot. While everybody else in the building was lacing up Gucci, Louis Vuitton, and Fendi, 50 Cent stayed in the product with 50 Cent's own name on the box. And the numbers went insane. Former insiders describe meetings where 50 Cent's first question was always the same. How many pairs did we sell this week? Not how's the album doing? Not what's the radio spin count? How many pairs? At the peak, Reebok was moving 40 to 50,000 pairs per colorway at a time. One back-to-school season, a single color reportedly cleared 75,000 pairs. Those are not celebrity endorsement numbers. Those are sneaker company numbers. Jordan-adjacent numbers. The kind of numbers that make executives in boardrooms stop what they're doing and pay attention to a kid from South Jamaica, Queens. Now here's where the forgotten detail enters the picture, and honestly, it's the most important scene in this entire 20-year saga. Picture the conference room. G-Unit is at the absolute peak. The whole crew has Reebok deals on the table. Real money, roughly $180,000 a year, and the obligation was almost insulting in how simple it was. Wear the shoe. That's it. That was the whole job. And one day, 50 Cent calls the meeting. Nobody knows what it's about. 50 Cent walks in, says nothing, and starts circling the table, looking down at everybody's feet. Lloyd Banks has on Gucci. Another soldier has on Louis Vuitton. Young Buck has on Fendi. The entire G-Unit roster, millionaires made by the machine 50 Cent built, and not a single one of them is wearing the G-Unit sneaker. The only person in that room wearing Reebok is 50 Cent. One man at the table looked up and said the words that should be carved into the wall of every business school in America. Look under the table. I'm the only one wearing the shoe. And that was it. 50 Cent pulled the trigger. 50 Cent stopped the checks. 50 Cent told the room, you have Reebok deals, and you forgot to wear the shoes, so I stopped paying you. I can spend that money somewhere else. Deal's over, guys. Just like that, $180,000 a year gone, because grown men couldn't be bothered to wear a free sneaker. Hold on to that scene, because everything Rick Ross is doing right now is a rerun of that exact mistake, just performed on a bigger stage with bigger numbers. Fast forward 23 years, and the same psychology is back on display. Reebok announces the G6 is returning, original white, red, and blue colorway, design kept close to the 2003 version that shook the industry. And before the shoe even hits the site, here comes Rick Ross with a full press tour of disrespect. Rick Ross goes on camera and says 50 Cent is lying about selling shoes. Rick Ross says stop lying. You filed a $100 million bankruptcy the last time them shoes were moving. Rick Ross says you got an endorsement deal, you don't own nothing. Rick Ross laughs and says them G-Unit sneakers are going to be in Costco, baby. Rick Ross even mocks 50 Cent's outfit from the Verzuz appearance, tells Curtis Jackson to get a stylist, and declares on camera, ain't nobody buying them ugly shoes. Y'all know ain't nobody buying them ugly shoes. Notice the pattern. Rick Ross is standing in the conference room again. Rick Ross is the man wearing Fendi at the Reebok meeting. Except now, the shoe isn't even Rick Ross's own deal. Rick Ross is mocking somebody else's product, somebody else's equity, somebody else's 23-year relationship with a global brand, while Rick Ross's own lane tells a very different story. And here's where the irony gets almost poetic, because while Rick Ross was roasting the G6, the internet had already watched Rick Ross's own numbers do something brutal. Rick Ross's album Set in Stone debuted at number 39 on the Billboard 200 with roughly 19,000 units in week 1, and that was after viral rumors had the number even lower. 50 Cent saw those reports and posted the coldest caption of the year. He got away with it for a while, but it's over now. Jig is up. 20 features, under 10,000 sales. It's over. 19 tracks on the album, 14 of them features, and the project still couldn't crack the top 30. The man questioning whether 50 Cent can convert followers into buyers just watched an album full of superstar features fail to convert anything. And this is the core of Rick Ross's whole argument, so let's be fair and lay it out clean. Rick Ross's theory is that modern numbers are inflated. Rick Ross says the bots are the new flex, and Rick Ross's version of the flex is no bots. Rick Ross asks a question that sounds smart on the surface. If you genuinely have a gazillion people streaming your music the first week, why can't those same people buy anything else you sell? Why doesn't the sneaker sell? Why doesn't the alcohol sell? Why is everything outside the music unsuccessful? That's Rick Ross's thesis. Attention doesn't equal conversion. Followers aren't customers. Now keep that thesis in your mind, because the universe was about to answer it in the most humiliating way possible. Reebok flips the switch. The G-Unit G6 goes live. And inside of 2 hours, gone. Sold out. Completely. Reebok CEO Todd Krinsky comes out publicly and says the company is incredibly excited about the momentum this release has created and can't wait for what's next. That's not a rumor from a fan page. That's the CEO of the company confirming the demand was real enough to make a corporate statement. A 23-year-old sneaker attached to a rapper whose last chart-topping album era was when some of the buyers were in diapers, evaporated from the marketplace in 120 minutes. No music video. No radio single. No 14 features. Just the name, the legacy, and the receipts. So let's do the math on Rick Ross's theory now. If streams don't convert to sales, why did the shoe sell out? If the followers are bots, did the bots buy the sneakers? Did 50 Cent buy all of 50 Cent's own sneakers, in every size, across the entire site, in 2 hours? The same internet that spent months calling the G6 ugly suddenly couldn't click checkout fast enough. Resellers were circling. The streets that supposedly don't mess with 50 Cent clean the shelves like it was 2003 again. One fan said it perfectly, mind you, I'm kind of tight because I ain't get a pair. People weren't debating the shoe anymore. People were hunting the shoe. And 50 Cent's own explanation for why it worked cuts right to the bone. 50 Cent said 50 Cent knew from the beginning they had something special. Back then, the focus was making noise and doing something that felt different. And to see people still excited about it all these years later, 50 Cent called it crazy and said the fans kept it alive. Read that twice. The fans kept it alive. Not a marketing budget. Not bots. Not a gimmick. A fan base so loyal it resurrects a product older than some of them. While the rival's current album can't move 20,000 units with 14 guest stars on it. And before we get to the sellout itself, you need to hear the regional angle, because it explains the venom. Some of 50 Cent's loudest critics keep trying to relocate 50 Cent's legacy, whispering that the South was carrying things back then, that New York only claims 50 Cent when it's convenient. 50 Cent's answer to that was ice cold. Your numbers don't support it. It's so much of a landslide it's not even a thing. Think about the audacity of that debate for a second. The G6 wasn't a sneaker that lived in one region. The G6 was a global event. Kids in London, Lagos, Tokyo, and yes, Atlanta, were all hunting the same shoe, because 50 Cent in 2003 wasn't a New York artist. 50 Cent was the biggest artist on the planet, and the sneaker was the physical proof. That's why this comeback matters so much. A regional legend can sell out a pop-up. A planetary legend sells out a retro 23 years later, without releasing a single bar of new music to promote it. And speaking of music, here's a subplot almost everybody missed while the shoe war was raging. 50 Cent quietly revealed that 50 Cent has been in the studio with Eminem, working with unreleased Tupac material that the estate personally greenlit, tied to a major film project. Let that breathe for a second. While the debate online was about whether 50 Cent is washed, 50 Cent was in a lab somewhere touching vocals from Tupac Shakur with Eminem on the boards. A privilege the culture reserves for exactly one living rapper. Estates don't hand out that vault to nostalgia acts. They hand it to artists whose name still moves the needle. 50 Cent even admitted there's a stash of unreleased records sitting in the vault, and gave the most 50 Cent answer imaginable when asked why nobody's heard them. If it doesn't sell, keep it to yourself. That's not insecurity. That's a man who treats music like inventory, the same way 50 Cent treated sneakers like inventory, the same way 50 Cent treats everything like inventory. Meanwhile, the trolling never stopped from the other side. Rick Ross went at 50 Cent's film studio in Shreveport, mocking the land prices, mocking the loans, asking what's taking so long. And sure, studios take years. But check the scoreboard. One man is mocking a construction site, the other man is selling out sneakers in 2 hours on a Tuesday. One activity produces content. The other produces revenue. There's a difference between roasting somebody's foundation and actually having one. And let's talk about what this shoe actually represents for the fans, because this is the emotional core the numbers people always miss. For the people who were there in 2003, the G6 isn't leather and rubber. The G6 is the summer everything changed. The G6 is the mixtape era, the mixtape spins. The first time a rapper's shoe sat next to the Jordans in the store like it belonged there. One fan said it plain, I need a pair of these to sit on the shelf. These are classics. That's not consumer behavior, it's museum behavior. People aren't buying a sneaker, people are buying proof that their eras mattered. And you cannot manufacture that with a feature list or a promo budget. 23 years of cultural deposits, and the interest just paid out in 2 hours. Think about the contrast in real time. The album needed 19 tracks and 14 features to crawl to number 39, while the sneaker needed 0 songs, 0 videos, and 0 features to vanish before dinner. Same culture. Same week. 2 opposite outcomes, and only one is a receipt. The scoreboard does not care who tells the funniest joke on the podcast circuit. The scoreboard only counts what people actually paid for, and people paid for the shoes Rick Ross swore nobody wanted. Every pair that left the shelf was a vote, and the election was a landslide. But wait, because Rick Ross didn't come empty-handed to this fight. Rick Ross brought one real weapon, and it's the same weapon Rick Ross has been swinging for over a decade, the bankruptcy. Every time the pressure gets hot, Rick Ross goes back to the well. You filed bankruptcy. You borrowed jewelry. You rented cars. And to be fair, that chapter is real. Back in 2015, 50 Cent filed Chapter 11, and in court proceedings 50 Cent testified that some of the flash associated with the image was rented, borrowed, or leased. A 65-carat ring? A borrowed piece from the jeweler. That testimony happened. Nobody is erasing that. But here's what Rick Ross never finishes reading out loud, because the ending of that story destroys the point Rick Ross is trying to make. Yes, 50 Cent filed. And then 50 Cent paid everybody back, walked out the other side, and built a second empire bigger than the first. The television universe 50 Cent built on Stars turned into one of the biggest franchises in cable history. 50 Cent's last world tour ran 103 shows and ranked among the top grossing tours ever for a hip-hop artist. 50 Cent bought property, built a film studio footprint in Shreveport, locked development deals worth 9 figures, and still found time to own equity in the very platform where Rick Ross watched 50 Cent perform. Remember that detail? Rick Ross told the story personally. People reminded Rick Ross that 50 Cent performed on Verzuz, and Rick Ross realized, wait, I own equity in Verzuz. Which means Rick Ross's boss moment was technically powered by the man Rick Ross calls broke. Curtis Jackson, thanks for your employment, Rick Ross joked. Read the room. The man you're mocking helped build the stage you were standing on. And that right there is the entire difference between these two empires. And it's the lesson from the conference room wearing a new outfit. Rick Ross measures wealth in what you can photograph. The estate, the jet, the cars, the pool, the Maybach. 50 Cent measures wealth in what you can own. Masters, equity, debt positions, production companies, television franchises, and a sneaker deal from 2003 that still prints money 23 years later. Visible wealth versus actual wealth. One man collects things that depreciate the second the flash goes off. The other man collects things that appreciate while the flash isn't even pointed at them. Now watch what the forgotten detail does to this whole beef. Why did 50 Cent stay loyal to that Reebok shoe when Gucci and Louis were sitting right there? Because 50 Cent understood something the rest of that room never learned. You wear the shoe because the shoe pays you. You protect the machine because the machine protects you. The sneaker wasn't footwear. The sneaker was equity in motion, a relationship with a corporation worth billions, a proof of concept that a kid from Queens could move product at a Fortune 500 level. Every time 50 Cent laced up the G6, 50 Cent was depositing trust into a bank that is still paying interest in 2026. Now look at Rick Ross's moves through that same lens. Rick Ross built the biggest flash portfolio in the game. But ask a simple question. What does Rick Ross actually own outright? The Bel Air situation has never had public terms. The estate bleeds operating costs around the clock. The jet costs thousands per hour whether it flies or not. And when Rick Ross's own music cycle needed one clean win, the album came home at number 39 with 19,000 units, while the shoe Rick Ross called ugly sold out in 2 hours. That's the whole argument, settled in the marketplace, by strangers, with their own money. No judge needed. No jury. Just receipts. And notice how 50 Cent responded to all of it. 50 Cent didn't drop a diss record. 50 Cent didn't cry on a live stream. When a podcaster questioned whether 50 Cent could sell out Yankee Stadium 3 nights in a row, 50 Cent just slid into the comments and dropped the stat. Last world tour, 103 shows, top 3 grossing ever. That's the 50 Cent playbook. You talk 50 Cent files, posts, or quotes a number. A portfolio of dead bodies, 50 Cent once called it. Somebody asked 50 Cent why even respond to Rick Ross, and 50 Cent said the quiet part with a straight face. Why ignore it when I could destroy him and create a portfolio of dead bodies? And when the interviewer pushed back and asked whether Rick Ross's career was actually destroyed, 50 Cent pulled the album numbers out of thin air like a magician. Triple C's. 34,000 copies. Knows the figure by heart. 50 Cent doesn't argue feelings. 50 Cent argues archives. Meanwhile, Rick Ross's counterpunch was telling on itself. Rick Ross said the new flex is no bots. Keep it genuine, keep it pure, do the long game. We're here 20 years later. And Rick Ross is right about one thing. 20 years later is exactly the standard. It's just that 50 Cent is the one actually meeting it. 20 years later, the sneaker sells out. 20 years later, the tour grosses 9 figures. 20 years later, the television universe is still expanding. The long game isn't saying you're playing the long game. The long game is lacing up the shoe nobody else would wear and cashing the check 23 years after the meeting. So where does this end? Here's the prediction. Reebok already said more is coming. The G6 wasn't a nostalgia drop, it was a market test, and the market screamed. Expect new colorways, expect retro G-Unit apparel, expect 50 Cent to turn this 2-hour sellout into a full lifestyle relaunch. Because that's what 50 Cent does. 50 Cent finds the asset. 50 Cent feeds the asset. 50 Cent never betrays the asset. And Rick Ross? Rick Ross will be back on a podcast in a month with a new angle, a new joke, a new reason the numbers don't count. The Costco line will get a remix. The bankruptcy story gets another spin. But the shelves will still be empty, and that silence is the loudest stat in this entire feud. Because that's the lesson the whole culture just got retaught for free. You can mock the shoe. You can mock the man. You can call the loyal fans bots, and the sold-out sign a conspiracy. But you cannot argue with an empty shelf, and you cannot Photoshop a receipt. The man in the conference room, who told everybody to look under the table, is still the only one wearing the shoe, and 23 years later, the whole world just looked under the table at the same time. Now the floor is yours. Did the 2-hour sellout officially end the Rick Ross argument, or does Rick Ross have one card left to play? And be honest, if the G6 restocks tomorrow, are you grabbing a pair or watching from the sidelines? Drop your take in the comments, hit the like button if you made it this far, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next chapter of this beef is already loading. Don't let anybody trick you out of the facts. This is real out here.